Hey, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. In this week's guitar lesson, we're going to be learning how to play over 2 chords. This is playing the chord changes, but instead of having a lot of different variables to have to deal with, I wanted to create a composition that was very simple and stripped down. We've got 2 chords. We're playing this in the key of E, so it'd be the 5 chord and the 1 chord. And it'll just be a lot easier to follow along and understand where we're at. So if you're interested in learning how to improvise and how to jam with other people, write your own music, this will be a great lesson for you because we're going to break it all down and it's all going to make sense. And as an added bonus for premium members, I've included the rhythm section as well. So the jam track has just 2 guitar parts, a rhythm and a lead. And so you'll be able to learn both the rhythm and the lead in this. So if you want to download the tablature, get that extra video or the extra lesson I was just talking about, and get the MP3 jam track that you can practice playing everything over, you can get those things by going to ActiveMelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP309. Alright, so I wanted to write a simple composition this week that has only 2 chords. So the jam track is just another acoustic guitar. So there's 2 acoustic guitar tracks. One of them is playing rhythm, the other one's playing lead, and we're playing over only 2 chords. So this song that we're going to be playing is in the key of E. It has the 5 chord, which is a B, and then the 1 chord, which is an E. And we just go back and forth between the 5 chord and the 1 chord. And I thought this would be a great way to demonstrate playing chord changes and finding chord shapes because you've only got 2 chords to work with. You don't have a lot of variables. So you got a 50-50 chance of getting it right as to which chord we're on in the song. And if you're a premium member, you'll also get the added bonus of I've included the jam track and the slow walkthrough and the tablature for how to play the rhythm part, which is this really cool kind of Johnny Cash rhythm that goes back and forth between those 2 chords. So that way if you're playing this along with a friend, one person can learn the rhythm part, the other person can learn the lead part, and you guys can trade off, and it's just a really great way to practice playing with another person. Or just practice playing rhythm if that's what you're interested in. So even though this song is in the key of E, it actually starts in the 5 chord, so it starts on the B chord. And the first thing that I played goes... That's the first thing we're going to learn. Now, what I was thinking about when I played that was I was thinking about the B chord. That's where if we were barring up here on the 7th fret, and these 3 fingers are playing the E chord shape that we'd learned down in first position. So you're playing your major bar chord there by barring on the 7th fret. That's a B chord. And with that in mind, even though I didn't play that chord shape, I visualized it so that I could play this lick. Now this is a great lick. You can use this in blues, country, everything going forward. Let me show you how to do it. So we're barring the first 3 strings on the 7th fret, and we're going to do a downstroke, and then I'm hammering on with my middle finger to the 8th fret, 3rd string. Now there's a strum pattern that I've put in the tablature, so I'm not going to go through all the strokes with the downstrokes and upstrokes in this. I think it'll be too cumbersome with what we're trying to go through. So if you're a premium member, you get access to that as well. But anyway, so that's the first thing we're going to do. And then we're going to do an upstroke on the 9th fret. Now I'm only playing the top 3 strings, and I'm barring all 3 strings with my ring finger. So, and then we go back and play strings 2 and 3, doing that hammer on, again behind the 7th fret, and an upstroke on the 1 string. So all together that part goes. Now all of that works really nicely over the B chord. Now let's stop for just a second there and let's analyze that. I want you to always walk away with how you can apply this stuff to other things, not just this one particular composition. If you wanted to use that now and dissect it and play it in other things, let's play it over A, for example. If it was a slow blues in the key of A, you could play. Look at that. You can take the same thing that we've just learned and look at how that relates to your chord shape. So if you're playing your A chord, you'd be barring here on the 5th fret. And I'm just pointing that out so that you can start to connect that or anchor it to something that's familiar. So that lick should now live in your vocabulary, and you can play that over anything. All right, so now that we've learned that, let's talk about how to count this in. So this would start on the and of 1. So if we're counting this in, you'd count it like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. Now I threw in an extra measure there because you'll hear that in the jam track. And actually you'll hear the pickup notes that happen in the previous measure. And those happen on the 4. So let me just show you how to count that in. So it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then, now you're not playing that when you're playing the lead part, but I'm just sort of throwing that out there so you can understand how all of this sort of counts in or kicks off. So the and of 1 is where the lead part starts. Okay, so after that, then I played. Now what's happening there is we're just walking down the major scale from the 5 chord down to the 1 chord. But instead of just playing single notes like that, we're playing triads or 3-note chords. So I'm starting with the B chord, which is a triad. I'm barring the first 2 strings on the 7th fret. I've got my middle finger on the 8th fret 3rd string. And then we're going to walk that down 2 frets. That would be an A chord. So we're going from the B to the A. And then watch this. Now I could have kept walking it down and played that like that. Which would be the G sharp minor chord. But instead of playing that there, I'm playing it here, and I'll explain why as we get into it. But here's how I'm playing that. I'm picturing the D7 chord shape. So if you can picture that in your mind, that's what I'm making here with these 3 fingers. My ring finger and my middle finger are on the 9th fret, strings 2 and 4, and my index finger is on the 8th fret, string 3. I'm only playing strings 4, 3, and 2. But that is the same as that. And so now I've got this chord shape. And the reason that I do that is look how tidy it is when you think about the vicinity that we're working within here. So if we're working around this 5 chord here, I've got this shape, this shape, this shape, and then I can slide that down 2 frets, and it's all in the same neighborhood. That way, if you're playing this in another key, you don't have to worry about running out of frets. So let's say you're playing it in G. You could go, right? You can walk it down, just walking down the major scale for the key of the song that you're in. In this case, we're playing it in the key of E, so we're playing the E major scale. And that's just a great transition to get you from the 5 chord to the 1 chord. So you can remember that now going forward. So once you understand that concept, you can play all kinds of variations of that. You can play, that's more of a country feel, but it's using that same concept of walking down the major scale but playing harmonies. So experiment with that and start to see what you can come up with. Now the way that I played it, when I came to that G sharp minor, I played that twice, and then I came down to the E chord. Now I did not come down to the E chord in first position, I came to this one. And this is where the whole cage system becomes important. You start to realize that you can play these chord shapes all over the place. Now, the way that I'm playing that is I'm barring the first 4 strings on the 4th fret. I've got my middle finger on the 5th fret 2nd string and my ring finger on the 6th fret 4th string. Now, why did I play that chord shape instead of down here? Well, the reason was I wanted to play this 6 chord thing that you hear a lot of times in country. It sounds like this. Now that doesn't make a lot of sense without the jam track, but when you hear it in reference with the jam track, you can hear that that's a really cool sounding E6 chord. And so the reason I came to this chord shape is I know this little trick from playing this chord shape. If I add my pinky here, in this case it would be on the 6th fret 3rd string, I can play strings 3, 2, and 1. Now listen to that. Now it sounds like that's a minor chord. So in actual fact that would be a C sharp minor. But it's also an E6 chord if you put the E in the bass. So when you're playing it on top of an E chord, it becomes an E6 chord. And that confuses so many people. But you just have to trust me that this is only defined by what chord you're playing it with, or what the bass note is. So in this case, if the bass note is an E, then you could play that triad and you have an E6. And the other cool thing about that is if you walk it down 2 frets, you're now playing an E9 chord. So you got the 6 to the 9. And you can do that anywhere that you can play an inversion of this triad. So I'll explain that more as we get into that. So after we played the E chord, I put my pinky down there, I went 3, 2, 1, and then I came up here with my ring finger to the 9th fret, and I barred the first 3 strings and played. Now listen to that. That's what I mean by you can play different inversions of that same triad. There's your 1 minor triad there. Here it is again here. But remember, we're playing this over the E chord, so the rhythm guitar is playing an E chord. So when you hear that in reference with the E chord, it becomes an E6 chord. Okay? You just have to trust me on that. All right, so it's 1, 2, 3, and then I went like that and played my index finger on the 7th fret 1st string, my ring finger on the 9th fret 2nd string. And that's just the top part of this E triad. That's what I was thinking about when I played it. I didn't need the full chord. Just wanted those 2 strings. So we have. All right, so let me back up and play everything that we've learned so far. We'll put it all together and it's going to start making a lot more sense. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. All right, now after that, the song goes back to the B chord, and I played this. Now what is this? This is exactly the same thing we just did over the E chord, and I did it twice to try and really hit home the point of what's going on here, because this is huge. So what we're doing here, so we're playing over the 5 chord, which is your B chord. Now listen to this. Now, some would argue that that's a G sharp minor, right? When you hear it like that, yes, it's definitely a minor chord. But if you hear it with the B in the bass, it's a 6th chord. It's the B6 chord. And remember, if you walk it down 2 frets, it's the B9 chord. So my point in this is to find the 6 and the 9 chord of a song. If you like that sound, that kind of pedal steel sound is probably a good way to describe it. You need to connect it back to a chord shape that you already know. So when we played the first E, when I played it up here, look at this E chord shape. That's used, or actually it's the E chord. You playing it with the A chord shape. So when I'm playing that A chord shape, I'm playing the E chord. I've got 1 finger on the 7th fret. And then I've got my pinky up here on the 9th fret, barring the first 4 strings. Now, I could take wherever my pinky is in this case, and just play the top 3 strings, and that is the 6th chord. It's a triad of that chord shape. So now you can find that chord shape in anything going forward. So when we just played this, the B6 to the B9, that is played off this B chord shape. Hopefully a light bulb just went off. Now you know how to find it. You know how to connect it back to something. You know how to play this chord shape. So now all you have to do is play the top part of that, and you're playing a 6th version of that chord. Why would you want to play a 6th version of that chord? It just gives it sort of a jazzy, old school country, western swing type feel, and it's a cool thing that you can work in. Don't worry about the labels so much. You can work it into blues or rock or anything, but that's how you play. That's your B6 chord. So that's what I did. And I walked up. It was on the 3rd string here, 2nd fret. Walked it up, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then played 1, 2, 3, and then played the whole chord, which would be the B9. Then back to the B6. But I put my pinky now up here on the, what note is that? That's the 7th fret 1st string. That's the B note. Remember our B chord? So that should be another little connection point in your brain to think, okay, from this chord shape, I can play now the 6th chord, and if I come up here I can connect it back to this version of the chord shape. They're connected now. So there's some connective tissue between those two chords. And another crazy thing, this connective tissue between the two chords is your major pentatonic scale. Holy cow, that should just blow your mind. You've got this chord shape, you've got this version of it, and then you've got your pentatonic right in between the two. It's kind of cool. So you can see how all this stuff is just interwoven. And once you start to see it, it's just a mind thing. It's not a technique with your fingers. You have to see it. Once you can start to see that, it's like your playing will go from here to here. After that, then I went. So then the song goes back to the E chord. And I'm thinking about, so we're still playing over the B chord for this part of it. So I was thinking about this chord shape, and I know that I can play a major lick out of this chord shape by going. So that would be barring the first two strings on the 7th fret and doing a hammer on to the 9th fret 2nd string. Hit that twice, hit the 1 string, and then do a pull off with your ring finger, whatever finger you're using there, on the 9th fret 2nd string. And then I put it down on the 9th fret 3rd string. You can hear the song is now over the E chord. And then there's this lick. This is a really cool lick because it's super easy to play. So all I'm doing is I'm just walking down basically the E chord. I'm starting at the top, 1, 2, those are open strings. And then I put my middle finger down on the 2nd fret 3rd string. And then from here, watch this, we're just going back to the E chord. There's a hammer on, and then the rest of the chord. This is just a lick that I learned somewhere, and I use that a lot if I'm playing a song in the key of E. It's a great filler, and you could play it fast or slow or take your time on certain notes, or you could even repeat it. But it's just a great way to pull the notes right out of the chord shape. You're not even thinking about a scale or anything. You're thinking about the E chord. Okay, now after that I went, and we went right back, so the song goes back to the B chord, and I came kind of back to where we started. I came back to this chord shape in my mind, and what I played was this lick out of this chord shape. So middle finger comes up to the 8th fret 3rd string, 7th fret 2nd string, 9th fret 2nd string, and then a half bend. And then after that half bend, we're going to release it and play the 9th fret 2nd string without the bend. 9, 7, 9 on the 3rd string. And then there's a hammer on between the 7th fret and the 8th fret on the 3rd string. And then we're playing the 1 string on the 7th fret. So I want you to learn this lick, but I want you to see what I just made there. I made the triad, the B triad. So now you should take that lick and be able to play that in any key now going forward. That's a great little blues lick. If you're playing the key of A, you know how to play that now in any key. Okay, so let's take it from. So after that, then I came up here to the 1st string. I'm still thinking about this chord shape. And I played that. So it's 7th fret 1st string, 9th fret 1st string, another half bend, back to the 9th fret 1st string, 7th fret, back to the 9th fret. So, all right, let's take it from. That's a hammer on there, 7th to the 9th. And I think I'm going to end this part 1 video here. There's a whole other part of the lead that I'm going to save for the second half. This is a lot of information we've covered, and hopefully you've got some great ideas that you can already start to use right away and start putting them into use with other things, not just this. Now, if you're not a premium member, look into it. It's a great value. And obviously with this lesson, and you get the entire back catalog, you get all the jam tracks and everything you need to be able to learn and become more proficient on the guitar. And learning how to improvise, not just memorize. That's my whole thing. All right, let's back it up from the beginning. I'm going to count it in. I'm going to play through it one more time, and then I'll see you in part 2 for the rest of this. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1.